Hello, welcome to Chuck's Diecast Car and Model Reviews. Today we're going to be taking a look, actually not at just one, but three of the, well actually kind of my favorite Formula One cars, at least of the 70s. These models are actually kind of interesting. These are all built by Bburago. They're all of larger scale than your standard cars. And they're actually all sort of transitional models between, say, a kid's toy and a real, collector's model. They're all made of plastic. They have good detail, but not great detail. But they are all, some pretty cool model cars here, okay? First one we're going to be taking a look at here is actually the oldest of the three. This is the Brabham BT46. As you can see here, this model is built by Bburago, and it is in 1/14 scale. And no, I did not pay $175 for it. I don't know what that $175 was for. Maybe it's $175 francs, I have no idea, but I got this a few years ago because I really like this car. For those of you who don't know much about the Brabham cars of the mid-70s, which is where this came from, the Brabham BT44 was very similar to this car. It was a very cool car. It was, however, it was I've seen, that car in the past, and it is actually white with the martini stripes, and it was powered by a Cosworth DFV motor. However, later on, as you can see here on the side, Brabham got a contract with Alfa Romeo to provide a motor, and, it wasn't quite as successful. The situation here was, first of all, the designer was Gordon Murray, who is one of the best and most famous Formula One car designers ever, and also he designed the McLaren F1. But he was stuck with this flat 12 Alfa Romeo V, 12-cylinder engine. This was the start of the ground effects era in the late 70s, and the flat 12 motor did not allow for venturi tunnels underneath to create, the underbody wing, and therefore, Murray had to come up with another idea on how to provide downforce for the cars. Now, this is a BT46, however, the later iteration was the BT46B, and this is the one you're probably most familiar with. See, what they did here is they took this particular car, sealed the back end, and then put a big fan in the back to suck it to the ground. And, I imagine you've seen photos of it and everything like that with this big gigantic fan, maybe 1.5 feet in diameter out the back, that's how it created the downforce, which it did win the first race it ever raced in, and never raced again because, of the basic protests by the other teams. It was legal, but it was protested against, and the team director, at the time was Bernie Ecclestone, and he wanted to just kind of keep peace among all the teams, so he agreed to withdraw the car. But this car was driven by Niki Lauda, and after he had left Ferrari, and it is, I think a rather gorgeous looking car. I love the slab-sided triangular shape here of the side pods, and the front wing is very interesting. You can see the radiator there between the two planes of the front wing, and I think it is just kind of a neat looking car. But taking a look at the model itself, you know, this model is over 40 years old, so it's you know, its paint is a little tired. The decals are, of course, looking a little worse for wear, but it is still, of course, you know, a good looking model for, you know, what it was. As I said, it's sort of a cross between a toy and a model, so the detail isn't super on this, but you can see here it does have no details in the cockpit. There's a, you know, the steering wheel does look decent, and there are gauges there behind the steering wheel, which of course, you know, they don't have anymore. So and the fidelity to the actual car itself is actually pretty good. You can see here the engine, or actually more the gearbox, and you can also see that it has inboard brakes. You can see the brake discs right in here, and it looks like the calipers are actually finned as well, so that's very interesting. So that is kind of a neat idea there. You know, all the detail here of the, you know, wheels is okay and all that sort of stuff. The details on the underside, well, you can see the flat 12 motor there and all that sort of stuff. So all in all, for what it is, it's not a bad model. Okay, now the second one I'm going to show you here is probably the most famous of all these models that I am going to show to you, because it is a World Championship winning car. This is the Lotus 79, and it's, you know, of course, iconic John Player Special, you know, livery here, also with the Olympus camera advertisements on the side. And as you can see, this is the Mario Andretti car that won the championship. Again, a decent model. Again, all plastic. This was the car that won the championship because this was the first car to seriously and successfully utilize ground effects, meaning that there was sort of a wing underneath the body here on the side pods. And so it was a, you know, excellent car, beautiful car. I actually managed to see this car run around the track at Laguna Seca during one of the historic races, being driven by the man himself, so that was really neat. Detail on the model is, as you know, you would expect, is okay for a semi-toy. There's nothing fantastic here on the engine. You know, you can see the velocity stacks and all that sort of stuff, but all that is just all cast one piece, and you can see the meshes all one piece on there as well. Interesting thing is when you look at the underside, because maybe Bburago at the time didn't know that this had ground effects, but the ground effects here, there are no ground effects shown on the bottom. So they didn't even know what the underside of the car looked like. You can see the Cosworth motor here and the transmission. You can also see that, like the Alfa Romeo, it had inboard discs in the rear. And, you know, other than, you know, like I said, the lack of the Venturi tunnels underneath and the general lack of detail due to it being, you know, a toy-like model, it is an okay model. Now, the next model I'm going to show you is actually what I think is one of the prettiest Formula One cars ever made, although this car was quite unsuccessful, okay? This is the Ferrari 312 T5. This is a unsuccessful development the Ferrari 312 T4, which had won the championship the year before for Jody Scheckter. Now this one, as you can see, is badged for Didier Pironi, which is kind of interesting because the 312 T5 in what would have been, I think, the 1980 season was actually driven by Gilles Villeneuve as well as Jody Scheckter, and then Jody Scheckter retired at the end of the season. All I can figure is that this car is from the next season and was driven by Pironi and Villeneuve until they brought out the Ferrari 126, which was their turbo car with ground effects. This particular car just was unable to compete in the season which it primarily raced, because by that point the ground effects mania had taken place, and everybody was running cars with underbody wings, except Ferrari was unable to do so as well as the others, because this car, like the Brabham, although you can't see it here, does, well, actually you can, it has a flat 12 motor, and this is of course wider than the Cosworth V8s at the bottom, so they could not create as much downforce with the underside of the car as the Cosworths could, because the wing, underbody wing, just could not be large enough. In fact, I don't even know if this is correct. You know, those are some pretty decent sized Venturis underneath there, and I don't know if Ferrari was actually able to create those underbody ground effects like that, like this particular model. But that being said, this and the T4 before it, I just thought were just the coolest looking cars. I mean, first of all, the shape of the body here, all this stuff here, and the side pods, I just think is gorgeous. The silver wings are awesome, you know, the bare aluminum there. And the 312 T4 the season before, until late in the season, didn't have this sort of funky, I don't know what you want to call this, but it's some sort of aerodynamic device on them, and they actually looked a little better without this, but I still think this is neat looking. Again, I've seen this car run around Laguna Seca as well, or at least the Villeneuve car, and again, it is a neat car, and that flat 12 motor sounds beautiful. So anyway, you know, the detail on this again is not bad. You know, the interior again is similar to the other two cars. The detail on the engine, again, not fantastic, but I just wanted to have these in my collection because they're all kind of neat, because they're a little bit larger, and these are cars of an era where I thought all the cars were pretty neat looking, partially because they didn't know much about aerodynamics. So they designed the cars as to how, you know, as to what they thought looked good. There was a lot of experimentation, and so there were so many cars looked different from each other, and that was kind of the appeal of Formula One back in the 70s. But anyway, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and sorry I have not, you know, been posting anything the last couple of weeks or so, but you know, honestly, this war in Ukraine has been kind of you know, been distracting me, and you know, it's actually really been pissing me off too. So anyway, if you did like this video, please, you know, like and subscribe to the channel, And of course, watch some of my other videos. Have yourself a nice day.